Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dear brothers and sisters, you don't even understand why they're suddenly on your mind. Yesterday you weren't thinking about them. You didn't talk. There was no message, no interaction. And yet now they're everywhere, in your thoughts, in your dua, even in your dreams. And the unsettling part is this: you don't know what it is. Is it love? Is it desire? Is it regret? Or is it a sign from Allah? It's confusing, isn't it? You open your phone and their name appears, a random memory, an old message from months ago, a photo you forgot existed. You close the app, but the feeling doesn't close with it. And suddenly you start wondering, did Allah put them back in my heart for a reason? Is this guidance or is this a test? Am I supposed to return or finally let go? No one really talks about this part. When someone keeps reappearing in your life, not physically, but mentally, spiritually, emotionally, it's hard to control and even harder to explain. It feels like their presence is shadowing you quietly, waiting for you to make a move. And that's where people usually go wrong. We either obsess or we suppress. We dive headfirst into emotions that aren't stable, or we silence something that might have been an answer to a dua we once made and forgot. But here's a truth most people won't tell you. Just because you can't stop thinking about someone doesn't mean it's love. And just because it hurts doesn't mean it's wrong. Sometimes it's deeper than that. Sometimes Allah is trying to get your attention, not because of them, but because of you. This isn't about romance, it's about clarity. Because the heart can deceive you, but Allah never will. So if you're exhausted from constantly wondering what it means, stay with this. What you're about to understand may not be what you expected, but it might be exactly what your heart needed. When you can't stop thinking about someone who isn't even in your life anymore, it does something strange to your soul. You don't talk, you don't text, there's barely interaction, and yet they show up everywhere. You hear their name in a random conversation, and your heart shifts. You dream about them, not in some romantic fantasy, but in that quiet, haunting way where you wake up feeling like something is missing. They even slip into your dua, even when you try not to make it about them. And the worst part, you don't know why. Your mind starts racing. Is this my nafs? Is shaitan playing with me? Is this a test? A sign? A punishment? You imagine scenarios. Maybe they're your soulmate. Maybe it's unrequited love. Maybe it's just your ego turning unfinished emotions into a lifelong obsession because you never got closure.
Let's be honest. Half the time, it's not even them you miss. It's how they made you feel. Seen, chosen, desired, important. Or maybe it's who you imagined they were, not who they actually are. So ask yourself something difficult. If Allah truly intended them for your life, why are they only present in your thoughts but absent from your reality? Because sometimes the constant thinking isn't divine inspiration. Sometimes it's loneliness dressed up as hope. And sometimes, yes, Allah allows their memory to linger, not to bring them back, but to refine you, to expose the attachments still hiding in your heart, to show you what you are clinging to. The Prophet ﷺ said, "The heart of the son of Adam changes more rapidly than a pot of boiling water." Your thoughts are not always signs. Sometimes they are storms, loud, overwhelming, but temporary. But here's the line you need to pay attention to. If every time you think about them your iman weakens, your focus breaks, and your dua becomes desperate instead of peaceful, that's not love, that's a warning. Because what pulls you away from Allah was never sent by Him to complete you. You're not weak, you're not crazy, you're learning to distinguish between divine planting and emotional hunger. And that takes maturity. When love turns into fantasy, it becomes a fitna. You're no longer loving them, you're loving a version of them your mind created. The late-night conversations that never happened, the healing you imagined they would bring, the future you built from one meaningful look. Meanwhile, in reality, they may never have even asked about your iman. That's the trap. When love shifts from real to ideal, from tangible to imagined, it stops softening your heart toward Allah and starts hardening it. You begin resenting unanswered du'as. You question why it isn't easy. You blame destiny for not delivering what your imagination promised. And you feed it. You stalk. You overanalyze. You replay conversations like they were revelation. The Prophet ﷺ warned about the zina of the eyes. And what is fantasy if not the zina of the heart? When your heart gives itself away without commitment, without nikah, without reality, you're disconnecting from the one who actually writes your love story. You cannot force peace from a story Allah hasn't written. Maybe that's why you're exhausted. Not because love is haram, but because your version of it has become a distraction from the one who created love itself. So ask yourself honestly, if this person never becomes yours, can you still be at peace with the author of your story? Here's something even deeper. Sometimes you're not thinking about them.
You're thinking about who you were when you imagined them. Maybe you miss the hopeful version of you, the one who believed love was close, the one whose dua felt alive because there was something specific to ask for. When that possibility disappears, you don't just grieve a person, you grieve a version of yourself. That's why your mind replays memories. That's why you daydream reunions. That's why you look for signs everywhere. But Allah says in Surah Al-Baqarah, "Perhaps you love a thing and it is bad for you, and perhaps you hate a thing and it is good for you, and Allah knows while you do not know." That verse hits differently when you're clinging. You don't need closure from a person if Allah is the one who closed the chapter. What if they're not a sign, but a test? The nafs is subtle. It doesn't always invite you toward obvious sin. Sometimes it dresses desire in religious language. Now the attachment feels meant to be. The obsession feels spiritual. The longing feels like qadr. But pause. If this was truly from Allah, why is it weakening your salah? Why is your heart heavier? Why are you more anxious than anchored? Not every beautiful feeling is divine, and that's hard to accept, because if you accept that, you might also have to accept that you fell in love with an illusion. Maybe this isn't guidance. Maybe this is a test. Will you follow your feelings or your faith? There was probably a night you forgot about, a quiet one, tears on your pillow, a whisper in the dark. Ya Allah, if they're meant for me, bring them close, and if not, remove them from my heart. Maybe this lingering thought is that dua being answered, not by bringing them closer, but by revealing what needs healing inside you. Sometimes Allah keeps a person in your mind, not to give them to you, but to show you your wounds, to show you what you attach your worth to show you that you think you cannot live without, to show you that you actually can. Maybe the silence was your sign. Maybe the distance was protection. Maybe the only time your heart feels truly peaceful is when you remember Allah, not when you imagine them. And that is your answer. Sometimes we don't want guidance, we want approval for a story we already wrote. But Allah loves you too much to say yes to something that will destroy your peace later. If they are pulling you away from Him, even slowly, even subtly, then what are you really holding on to? No one sent by Allah to complete you will require you to compromise your connection with Him. So if your heart hurts, let it hurt. But don't run back. Don't label attachment as destiny. Don't mistake obsession for qadr. Let this be a turning point, not a spiral. And tonight, before you sleep, make this dua. Ya Allah, if this person is good for my deen, my heart, and my akhirah, bring them closer in a way that brings me closer to you. And if they are not, remove them gently from my heart and heal the part of me that still wanted them. If these words reached something inside you, don't ignore it. Write that dua, share it, make it for someone else who feels stuck. Because healing sometimes begins with surrender, and this might be yours.